Kate, thank you so much for today's workshop. And I have a question. Like today, we had around 50 to 60 internationals who are looking for job here in Denmark. I want to know from your point of view,
Yeah.
like tell us what the Danish companies, the hiring manager, they are missing on not hiring internationals.
They're missing out on so much talent, essentially. They're missing out on innovation, different innovative idea. They're missing out on different ways of thinking, creativity. I find that when a company is too homogeneous and have the same way of thinking and you're all from the same culture, you kind of stick to those same ideas. Whereas what an international can bring is like it also could bring so much fun.
Yeah.
You could bring so much culture. You could bring events. You could bring something new in a company that you never thought of before. So that's where like there's so much talent.
Yeah.
Like and at the international there's a lot of misconception that the internationals who came to this event, they are not like unskilled labor.
Yeah.
These are very, very high skilled labor who have degrees in Denmark, who are highly specialized.
Yeah.
And who can bring something different that they're maybe looking for, because there is talent here and talent is needed. There's a huge shortage in the Danish labor market.
Like I see, like there are a lot of jobs.
Yes.
There are a lot of jobs, I think, in every field, right?
Right.
And there are people who want to have that job. So do you have like maybe one or two tips for all the internationals? Like you already shared
Yeah.
so many things, but for
Yeah.
people who are watching on YouTube,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit like what can they do to get that job in Denmark?
Take initiative.
Mm-hmm.
You take initiative by learning how to analyze a job ad and decide whether to make a call, send an email, be curious, ask questions, have a different perspective, and say that it's about taking it out, thinking outside the box and think about, okay, this is not just about getting a job. This is about developing a professional relationship to this person and asking yourself the question, is this the right fit for me?
Yeah.
Essentially. And that helps with your mentality mindset too, as well. Um, and also have a good LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
That's so important. I know a lot of people say this, but it's so true. And also, um, it's doing, and the other thing for internationals is like, do what makes you feel comfortable. Don't
Yeah.
do something that makes you uncomfortable in doing. Because if you're uncomfortable in doing something that you're forced or feel like you're forced to do,
Yeah.
then it can lead you in situations that that could have consequences, essentially. So,
And Kate, you always mention about play your international card, which is
Yes.
like if you're new to Denmark,
Yeah.
how can you present yourself in a better way? Could you tell more about that
Yeah,
idea?
so when I use your international card, when you're new to Denmark, I mean, I find in general that Danes are very kind and caring and willing to go all the way to help you. So when you're going, you could start off by networking. You could try it and see if it works for you, and say, I'm new in Denmark. I'm still understanding the culture of Danish society. I would like, would you have some time to give me some advice on like CV or whatever it is? Like, I would happy to treat you for coffee,
Yeah.
my treat, something like that, because everyone loves coffee except
Yeah.
me. But I think when you use that international card, it's okay to like, because people are understanding when you come here. Like
Yeah.
even if you've been here for years, like it takes a long time to learn a culture. Like it takes a long, long time, and and culture is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
We tend to forget about that culture changes. So you're always learning something new, and it's okay to use your international card and
Yeah.
say, I don't understand something. Could you please help me understand so I
Yeah.
can improve on what I'm doing,
Yeah.
So yeah, never be afraid to ask for help.
Ask for help. Yes. Thank you so much, Kate.
Yes.
All like a glimpse of Kate's workshop is following this video. So do watch the video till the end. And I also have a full interview with Kate on my channel. I'm gonna put all the link. How can you follow Kate and get her help to find a job here in Denmark in the description. So thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you for coming, Kriti.
Yes, and finally meeting you.
I know, right?
Yes.
Bye-bye.
This really is what Denmark is about for me, because I find from a lot of my experiences that Danes are very kind, they're very caring, I mean not all, but most, and they're willing to go out of their way to help you. And that's why I say, like, don't be afraid to ask for help, because the worst that can happen is they say no, and you're still from the same space that where you are, and you move on. You know, like you have nothing to lose by asking for help and getting many different opinions to come to your own conclusion what works for you, essentially, yeah? So the other thing I really like learned in this process is asking questions, like actually making the call. I mean, I do a whole workshop on this. I'm doing that in Aarhus next week on how to contact Danish companies for a job ad, because I don't believe in calling for the sake of calling, but at least in American culture, and I believe also in Indian cultures as well, like you don't call, and you usually call a decision maker. So I think there's a big misconception that we have to like call for the sake of calling and so on. It's not just about that. You really need to have a different perspective on this, because it's not just about calling to help you with your application. It's about building a professional relationship. I repeat, it's important to build a professional relationship with this person, because it's most of the time it's a decision maker. It's very different. Even with a recruiter, yeah, you can build a professional relationship with the recruiter. It's a little bit different in that regard, but most of the time it will be a decision maker. And when you go into that mindset of like building that professional relationship and going and analyzing and asking the right questions, it gives you a different thought process. And also you go in not only about thinking, okay, this is about building a professional relationship with this person, it's also about asking yourself the question, am I the right fit for this position? So when you go and think, and I think a lot of the times when you look at internationals, when they look at a job ad, they're like, well, everything's there. There is always something that you can ask. You could go to the website, be curious about, find out, and like you can also ask one like very, very easy question. You can ask, well, could you, like, if there's nothing, like when you go to a website, right? If you look at a startup on their website, a lot of startups don't know what their company values are. Maersk does, and like Vest does, and Grundfos, like big companies like Lego, they know what their company values are. So obviously you're not going to ask them about your company values, right? You have to be smarter than that. But if it's a startup and they don't know about what their company values are, then that's a very easy question to ask them, right? Say, what are your company values? In Denmark, they use LinkedIn more than any country in the world per person per capita, which is kind of weird with like Denmark being so small and like, I mean, when you talk about like United States and whatnot too. Especially if you are an academic or even as like with a person with a degree, it's just very important for you to have that. It's also like what's becoming, I'm seeing more on LinkedIn, where like for chefs as well, where they're branding themselves on LinkedIn, and it's just become this like huge platform for even like other types of positions and branding and especially marketing. So in engineers, it's just crazy. So it's important to optimize your profile. So that's one of the reasons why I say get a professional headshot done, essentially, because you're going to need it. If you decide to use it in your CV or not, you're going to need it for your LinkedIn profile. You can't really get around it with LinkedIn, unfortunately. You should just have a picture. Keywords are very, very important. It needs to look good. It needs to have the right keywords to be found, and that's when you look into, like, when you decide, or those of you who are reinventing, it's really, really important to, like, that's the other advice I give to people is, like, when you choose one path you're going to go to, stick with it, because the problem is if you go into 3 different paths, let's say you want to do marketing, project management, and sales at the same time. I get a lot of people like this who come to me and say, I want to do all these things. Can you help me get in something? And I always encourage people, stick to one. Because what happens a lot of the time is that Danes will think that you don't know what you want, and that's very unattractive to them. It comes off as desperate because they really want you to love what you do. So really, when you decide to reinvent yourself, choose one track and stick with it, and stick for it as long as you can. I say minimum 6 months. Law of Yenta, long story short, philosophy of Danish culture that has kind of been integrated in Danish society. And so with this, it's the idea of not boasting or bragging and being humble, essentially. And that's kind of a problem when you're applying for jobs, because you kind of need to talk about your skills and competences in a positive way. And how do you do that without boasting? So you don't say things like being number one in your class, right? Don't put in your top grades, because Danes don't care about your grades. They just care if you can do the job, essentially, at the end of the day. It's a little bit different in academia and going into PhD in university. That's like a whole other conversation for another time. But you could phrase things like, about round teamwork, right? And that I was able to help achieve this by having such a great team. So you have to put yourself in that team perspective, and that's one of the ways to help control to help being boastful. And that's hard I know that's hard for me as an American, because you always want to, that pat on the back, I think, and you always want to be, to be told that, you're doing a great job, but Danes don't do that. They only tell it to you if they really feel that you've done that. And so for those of you going to Danish work culture, don't expect to be praised all the time for your work, because they do it on very, very rare occasions.